everybody, this is What If All Test, and we're here with the interview of Larry Harris, the designer of Axis and Allies War Room, and coming out with the new game Imperial Borders. The link to his company Nightingale Games is in the description, so check that out when you want to. This interview is going to be between half an hour and an hour, and we're just going to go through questions of the board game industry and his experience with it and the games themselves. So thank you so much for being here, Larry. And our first question is, what drew you to World War II as an era?
Well, what other era could compete with World War II, frankly?
Yeah.
How I see it. No, I've always had an interest. And of course, those who know me know about how I stumbled into my father's World War II diary and his adventures, is what it equates to, in World War II in the Pacific.
Yeah.
And how it just drew me in and fascinated with me. This grand story that just occurred just before my birth, frankly.
Yes.
So I just got attracted to it, and then I was sucked into what we could call history, and that people had certain ways of doing things that were different back then. I wanted to know about those differences. That might help me better understand why they did this or that.
Yeah.
So World War II was the catalyst to my interest in history itself.
Yeah. I mean, I've basically found that, for at least for my fan base, about a third World War II is their favorite era ever. And it's just the drama of it, where battle between good and evil, just a huge scope and all that stuff, so I completely understand.
Yeah, good and evil. It couldn't be more clear.
Yeah.
Who is good and who is evil, and democracy itself was in question, and the enemy were so effective, and they were the villains, perfect villains.
Yeah.
Perfect villain. I hear the theme song from Darth Vader in the background.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, something I've also found is that it's one of the conflicts where it's easiest to distinguish, like, everyone's a state. And so for a lot of earlier conflicts, like the Mongols, it's really hard to, like, write board game rules for the Mongols because they're just a nomadic tribe.
Yeah, Mongols. Wow. What a fascinating subject.
Yeah.
You got this expansion through Asia going out, center of Mongolia. Very cool. They could moving, because the theme is cavalry. That might be an interesting game to tackle.
Yeah.
I'm not sure what the object of the game would be. But stop them.
Not getting murdered by Genghis Khan. Everyone teams up against him.
They would pull up in front of with their Corvettes. And they would pull up in front of a town and yell out, "If you don't surrender tomorrow morning, we're going to come in and roast."
Yeah.
Their legend had been preceding them, or the harp of their coming attack is just everything in front of them for 20 months. And so by the time these guys knocked on their door and then made this threat, it must have been incredibly horrible. But very effective, and high maneuverability, well trained, and a dedicated army. No, not for the world. Their known world.
What is there, or what is the story behind Axis and Allies?
Well, that's got a lot of holes in it. I thought the war itself and the supply lines and the manufacturing, and the fact that my country was its biggest contribution. Don't want to say that, but a big contribution was its manufacturing ability. And never do I get to see World War II movies or read books about World War II that really talked about that. It was always about the battles themselves, not the riveting girl there, Rosie, and it was or what was happening in Detroit when. Well, with the army we suddenly built, and so I thought that would be a a good aspect to bring in or incorporate in what I was beginning to imagine to be a simulation game of World War II. And I said, hey, if everybody played a country, one of the main countries, then I actually counted them off with my finger. I said, yeah, I could get six. I could get all main six, combatants in there. And so one thing led to another, and there you go. And but it was a process that started in 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 France back in the 70s. I started doing World War II Axis and Allies. I called it 1942 at the time.
Yes. Yeah, that's all very interesting. Like, the impression I got is my dad was really into board gaming in the 70s, and war in Europe and games like that, it was entirely combat. There was no home front, and they were just given a certain amount of resources, and you were expected to do stuff with them.
Yeah.
Yeah. What's your favorite board game you haven't made?
Well, I've always loved diplomacy.
Oh, that's my favorite ever.
Yeah. I used to play diplomacy by phone.
Yeah.
I had the ability. I don't know what it was. This was in the early '80s, and
Yeah.
got back from Europe, and I was intrigued by this American phone system. It was really amazing compared to what I'd been enduring in Europe, and so I would be playing diplomacy with phones, and I could speed dial people and stuff, and I could call up somebody and pretend like I was somebody else, and I would talk to him about who the British or French are going to do, and I probably was Italy, and I would be lying to him or setting up
Yeah.
stuff, all pretending to be someone else.
Yes. Yeah.
That was so satisfying, and I don't know, because it was, after all, diplomacy. I don't know if that was actually cheating or not.
Yeah. Yeah. I really love that aspect of diplomacy. My rule is just to have every single statement I make be at least partially a lie, so no one knows what the truth is.
I thought you were going to say partially true. Okay.
Yeah.
That's
It's
even deadly.
yeah. Yeah, my favorite is just breaking up coalitions. Well, you maintain a single objective and just follow that objective.
Yeah. Yeah. There's two games that I think someone who graduates from high school should
Yeah.
play.
Yeah.
Should know how to play. And one of them is diplomacy.
Yeah.
And to have the tough enough hide to be able to understand sometimes
Yes.
politics get dirty.
Yeah.
Just get used to it. It's something that adults deal with all the time.
Yes.
Now that you're almost an adult yourself,
Yeah.
here you go. Here's your introduction to that kind of nonsense, terrible stuff. And the second game is chess.
Yes.
I think everyone should know how to play chess. Everybody should have a little dose of critical thinking and forward looking and action and reaction. And chess is brilliant.
Yeah.
Everyone should play it
Yeah.
before they graduate from high school.
Yeah, those games, they just bend your mind with their complexity at times, which is often the way the world is.
Well, yeah, I mean, if I move here, there's going to be a consequence. If I don't pay
Yeah.
attention to what he's doing, there's going to be a consequence.
Yeah.
It's life itself right there on, 64 squares. So.
Yeah. What is your... how has the board game industry changed since you made Axis and Allies?
It's been a lot of Action Allies knockoffs. I mean, some serious knockoffs. Jesus. Wait, Jesus. Euro games have shown up,
Yeah.
and somehow it became Ameritrash and Euro games.
Yeah, yeah.
And, wow. I mean, let's face it, Euro games, all they are is a game mechanic that they try to fit into some kind of theme.
Yeah, yeah.
Bam, there's my salvo.
Yeah. What's your thoughts on Catan?
About what?
Catan, Settlers of Catan.
Oh, I don't know why they ever wanted to settle there. Is what my
What, the desert's next to the forests? Not climactically good?
that's fine, but some of these people you got to live next to, you just wish you had a standing army with you.
Yeah, that's always the thing that annoys you at Catan. These borders make no sense. Can I just conquer you?
Just give me an 8-sided die and I'll wipe out this son of a gun.
Yeah. Because it's supposed to be like 1200 AD. In real 1200 AD, everyone would have knights and they'd just be butchering each other and building castles.
1200 AD, yeah, they're getting ready to die with the plague. We were speaking about that earlier.
Yeah.
Let's see, that 1200, yeah, no, that's about 100 years before.
Yeah, 150.
So, anyway, in all, I'm probably just envious and jealous of their royalty checks. That's all.
Yeah. Yeah. For Euro games in general, I mean, I'm more of a war gamer, as you've probably all guessed. And Euro games, I'm not a huge fan, but I like some of the aspects they've brought in. I like the limit, and I saw you added this for War Room, the limitation of the amount of stuff you can do in a single turn.
What are you saying here? I'm not sure I got the gist of your question.
Yeah,
but yet I'm fascinated by the question. So
like from Axis and Allies to War Room, there you move from having a system where you can have an infinite amount of stuff you can do in a single turn to a limitation, and I think that was a really positive move.
Okay, this is a good time to talk about that kind of stuff. About designing games and what you can ask people to do, and and how I approach game design, storyboard gaming.
Yes.
I often compete. My historical values are challenged by my game mechanic values.
Yes.
And actually now I often ask, what size unit does this represent, or these tanks, or this or that, and I just can't answer that question, and don't want to go there because I need that abstractness.
Yeah.
Because your mind, you the player, are all part of this experience that we're doing here. So I leave a lot of room for you to fill in stuff that you, I bet you look at Action Allies in one way, and I'm looking at it, and I'm seeing something totally different out there. And because you are, by design, filling in some blanks.
Yes.
Like, what's the size of this unit, and what does it represent? So,
yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
I don't know why I went off on that thing, but
I totally understand. And on some of my maps, I purposely leave small countries unfilled. On my maps for my YouTube show, I purposely leave some of the smaller countries unfilled because I have no idea what they are. And if I pick up a random name, then people are going to debate it for hours.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. What's the most fun part of making a board game for you?
It all looks like fun, and believe me, it's work.
Yeah.
And you're talking about your 12 hours? You should see the time I spent. Especially these last two War Room.
Yeah.
That was like a 5-year odyssey. It was like crazy.
Wow. Yeah.
When I think about it, the reason why it took so long is because, in fact, it went through about 12 iterations. There was almost 12 different games.
Yes.
Before we got to
War
Room has become. And I swore I'd never spend that much time on a game again. And now I'm my, third or possibly fourth. No, it can't be 4 years already. Anyway, it might be 4 years into Imperial Borders. So, but we are sensing the end. Every day we just we go through. We do play testing. We write rules around it. We challenge things. It's a great system. We're gonna have a flawless game. Can't say stuff like that. I can. We're gonna have a flawless.
Yeah, I would agree. War Room is a flawless game.
Excuse me?
I would agree. War Room is actually a flawless game.
Oh.
Yeah, I really like the changes it made from Axis and Allies.
Oh, thank you again.
Yeah.
Yeah, no. Uh, you got to understand. I have some feelings on this
Yeah.
subject. Allies is one of my children. I made War Room different
Yeah.
than that of Axis and Allies.
Yeah.
An example of that was, by all means, the morale section that I incorporated, that
Yes.
real era there that you go through. That itself, and then there are not figurines.
Yes.
That was not only because it worked better without figurines, but also a point of difference that was invited. Yeah, you know.
Yeah.
So I have room in my heart for both, and I hope
Yes.
you, as a consumer, have room in your wallet for both.
Yes, I certainly have. Yeah, I have War Room, Axis and Allies, and Axis and Allies and Zombies.
Oh, yeah.
Did you have a hand in Axis and Allies and Zombies?
Well, no, actually, I really didn't.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Which of the Axis and Allies knockoffs have you been involved in?
What?
So, were you involved in creating the World War I based one?
Oh, knockoffs. You said knockoffs. You mean spin-offs.
Oh, sorry. I'm terribly sorry. The two got mixed up in my head.
With all the knockoffs, right? No, I worked on all the spin-offs.
Okay.
With the exception of Zombies.
Okay.
And so, but World War I, 1914.
Yeah.
What a terrific game. And then
Yeah.
Bulge, I love that. Guadalcanal, I poured my heart into that. I don't want to get into it. It's
Yeah.
good
Yeah.
game.
Yeah.
And so let's see, just going down the list. Hard to say. And then of course there's the anniversaries and so on. Anyway, your question. Your next question, if I haven't answered
Yes. How do you nail down game balance?
Balance?
Yeah.
There's only one way to nail down anything about a game, and that's
Yeah.
to play.
Yeah.
And play test. We have, I say, we're in our, I guess, coming up into our fourth year. We're into our fourth year. Every time our rules have been written for a while.
Yeah.
But playtesting provokes stuff.
Yeah.
And we look for stuff, and we create problems, and we ask tough questions, and then we say, "Oh, damn! I gotta write another paragraph on that."
Yeah.
Forgetting it, because I got to keep this game simple as possible.
Yeah.
It has a broader appeal, and plus, I should be, as a good designer, I should make complicated things simple.
Yes.
You're there not to be impressed with me, but to enjoy your adventure here.
Yeah.
With this game, I feel like I'm providing you entertainment. I feel like at times I feel like I'm writing a movie.
Yeah.
Games, cool. Yeah.
Yeah, I've done. I do a bit of amateur game design, and one of the things I once heard is I made a 100 Years War game, and someone said, this is brutally historically accurate, and that's why it's not fun.
Mm-hmm.
Because it just lasted forever, and no one ever won.
There's always a trade. Oh well.
Yeah.
There's always a trade-off.
Yeah.
It's a long game.
Yeah.
War Room, I don't think is as long. It's got that self-ending system.
Yeah.
But, another game that's very long and particularly successful is Dungeons and Dragons.
Yes.
So maybe it's okay to be long.
Yeah.
If you can leave it set up and your cat won't crawl over it.
Yeah.
If you can set it up and get together with your friends every Wednesday. I used to play Diplomacy, like I said.
Yeah.
And I found a similarity between with Axis and Allies and Diplomacy, and that is when I'm not in front of the board, if there's an ongoing game going on, maybe it's somebody's basement or somebody's house, wherever, and I'm involved in it, and it's only Tuesday, and we meet every other Thursday.
Yes.
I find my mind drifting to that map, that board.
Yeah.
Where
Yeah, I'm exactly the same way.
there's ways to, you don't have to be in front of a board to enjoy the board, the
Yes.
game itself. So, but yeah, I mean, a game should be able to be finished. I don't know, as long as it takes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah. Hmm.
um, I am conscious that I might appeal to a broader base if a game was 3-4 hours long. So I keep that in the back of my mind, and
Yeah.
I don't try to make games long for the sake of making them long. Quite the contrary. I
Yeah.
try to make them as simple and as short as they can be, but
Yeah.
yet not lose their guts.
Yeah. It reminds me of when my father was young, he would play like War in Europe, and that game would just take months of their lives, and they'd play it for the entirety of weekends, or War in the Pacific.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, then you know exactly what I'm talking about.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah. Do you think video games have changed the role of board games?
Have changed the world of
Yeah.
board
Yeah, yeah. Like,
games. Changed the world of board games.
yeah.
Yeah, looking at you, I understand the question. Yeah, because if you were to look at me and ask that question, my response would be, we thought board game business was dead and everything was going to be replaced with electronics.
Yeah.
Because how could we compete against this?
Yeah.
And what we then discovered was, oh my God, there's a social thing going on or
Yeah.
missing
Yeah.
electronics. So board games, yeah, they supply a social aspect that
Yeah.
games don't. So let's take advantage of that and let's design accordingly.
Yeah.
So yeah, so it's something great about Axe now. There's a 6-player game. I can socialize with 6 different people.
Yeah, yeah.
Napoleon or no, not with Axe and Allies. Axes and Allies, you'd probably be either Eisenhower or Rommel.
Yeah, yeah.
Whatever. And so, yeah, yeah.
Hmm.
Sorry,
Yeah.
I went off on a, yeah.
Perfectly fine.
Bring me back.
Yeah. What eras of history or topics have you wanted to make a game about, but have not or are planning on?
Yeah, I haven't, okay, I don't know why or how it's all happened, but I just discovered
Yeah?
in a moment in history that I am have been hypnotized with, and maybe it's because I'm learning about it in some meaningful way. I've always heard about it, but in some meaningful way, I'm starting to understand it better. And that's the English Civil War.
Oh, yeah.
Is it English or British? What did it? I guess.
Depends on how you want to define it.
Yeah, I guess I would say English Civil War, right?
Yeah.
And what was 1640s, I think, and interesting time. It was really everything was kind of not that modern, and cannons and guns and rifles and stuff were still very new. People were mostly using spikes and spears and swords, and then you got the rifle thing coming, or flintlock.
Yeah.
So there's an interesting moment, and then you had these terrible cannons, and then you had the King of England, who has been put on Earth, according to the Royalists, by God Himself, and consequently, it's hard to have a revolt against him, but they did.
Yes.
And who were these people? And they were quite courageous. They were way the hell ahead of their time.
Yeah.
Who was it? I can't recall the parliamentary, the biggest hero there.
Oliver Cromwell.
Cromwell.
Yeah.
And thank you. And so he's an interesting guy, and his position and his sense of I don't know, not democracy so much, but rights, human rights, and so on, was very American, and it was that thinking that was probably brought to the Americas.
Yes.
Yeah. So anyway, so it's an interesting discovery. So I hope that answers your question on that.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, I found the 17th century a fascinating period, and it just seems perfect for board game design because you have all these international machinations and
What century?
political,
Yeah,
the 17th century.
17th, you said?
Yeah, yeah,
Yes.
yeah. Yeah, and you have all these like machinations and political struggles and all that stuff.
Yeah, like what? Holland and England.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Wow. A lot of, and then America was just
yeah,
starting to,
yeah,
be completed.
yeah,
What a, yeah, not very touched, but
yeah,
it's like the genesis almost. It's like
yeah,
the beginning of the story of, yeah, yeah.
yeah, yeah,
Oh, yeah. Thank you for that question. I appreciate it because I am myself aware of how surprised I am to have late in life like this taken this interest. I don't know if it's a marketable theme. I don't know if I should with maybe I should just stick with sure winners that I know, like I don't know, World War II, now Napoleon,
yeah,
World War One, and not go into the British Civil War. But who knows?
yeah. Yeah, this might not be valuable to you, but my personal experience or my fan base is that the early modern period has a big following. A lot of it's actually based off Europa Universalis, which was a video game that came back out a couple years ago, where you basically manage an early modern European nation, and so that's generated a huge fan base. And after World War II, I think the Roman Empire is the most popular.
Yeah, Roman Empire. My gosh.
Yeah,
Yeah. I um, I designed Conquest of the Empire.
yeah,
Um, yeah. I am very tempted to revisit that game.
yeah,
I'd like to bring to it um, some of my better and more mature design skills.
yes,
So I would update it and um, and bring a little bit more to the theme itself. I want it to really feel Roman. Um, yeah. Again, I have interest in that.
hmm. Hmm. Very interesting. Um, I did some research, and you've worked for companies like Hasbro, Mattel, and what can you say about big companies like that?
What can I say about them?
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, it's great. I loved working with them. Did you see the movie Big?
No.
No. Okay, I see the movie Big. There was a lot of big.
Yeah,
I went to Milton Bradley. I had just returned from Europe, where I was a game designer, a
yeah,
successful designer in Europe. Where I successful, I was a beginner, but successfully beginning. And so
yeah,
I said, if I can create and do this kind of work here in Europe, I bet I can do it in my own country. So
yes,
after 8.5, 9 years, I came back to the United States with that intention. And um, let's see, Headhunter, Milton Bradley, got a job. This is my first year with Milton Bradley. I had 13 games in their catalog.
yeah,
And by the same designer. And and I was launched, and I loved every minute of Milton Bradley, and I loved the people. It was great people to work with, and most importantly, it was a creative environment, and I learned a lot about how creative environments should be, and the value of creative people. And then it went on to Hasbro, went on to Parker Brothers, it went on to Coleco even.
hmm.
For them, Cabbage Patch. So what was happening was a lot of these companies were just buying up the company I was in at the time.
Yeah, yeah,
Bigger
yeah,
fish.
yeah, yeah,
Like when I at one point I left Milton Bradley, and I should have never done this, but I went to work for Mattel, and 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 Milton Bradley never really forgave me, but Milton Bradley was bought up by Hasbro. Then I found myself working at Parker Brothers, and then Hasbro bought Parker Brothers. So now I was back with the Milton Bradley.
yeah, yeah,
It was like incestual. Oh man,
yeah,
I met great people. So yeah, but it's corporate world. But yeah, I mean, if you're a true professional designer, you got to make schedule, you got to make deadlines.
yes,
If you can just buy into that, and the corporate and I could, because I saw the value in it. I mean, I had been in the Army for 5 years. I saw how that corporation worked, and I bought
Yeah.
into it. But I could certainly buy into corporate America. And
Mm.
but but I got to tell you, I've been self-employed, and I've been employed by corporations. I like being self-employed.
Yeah.
Cool. I'm having a time of my life right now.
What are you most excited for about Imperial Borders coming out?
I'm not sure I understand your question. What am I most excited?
What are you most excited to project into the world with this game?
Okay, man. I gotta tell you, this is so cool. This game.
Yeah.
Well, first of all, there's two games.
Yeah.
There's two ways to play.
Yeah.
The first scenario explores what might have happened had the Congress of Vienna failed to maintain the peace.
Yeah.
After Waterloo, and that is where a game where everybody is against everybody else.
Yeah.
Not controlled by Napoleon, but by Louis XVIII.
Yes.
And it's a wonderful basket of crabs.
Yes.
With their imperial-like looking forces. You have the Prussians, the Austrians, the Russians, Britain, France, and Spain. And did I say Russians? Yes. And they go at each other on a wonderful combat system. I don't know if I should be showing you anything at this point, only because I don't know what Tom's strategy from a marketing is on that. But beautiful components, not too complicated, really free moving. Feels like you feel the wind through your hair with this game. Got some really cool mechanics. And then there's a second scenario, and that is where what would happen if Napoleon had won?
Yes.
And can the other powers in Europe collaborate to defeat Napoleon?
Yeah.
And if so, which of them would become the dominant European power? Yeah. So they have to cooperate to a certain point against Napoleon, who's running his own French army.
Yes.
Converted from the French white flag, right, the imperial flag, to the Bourbon flag, to the bleu blanc rouge, or French, flag. So and then we have Napoleon. If he's present on the battlefield, you get to roll more dice. If he's in proximity of the territory and so on, he has an impact. You get medals. You win.
Yeah.
You win. You get. You're going to physically get.
Oh, magnifique.
These things for different.
Très beau.
You get them for, and they're worth. Sometimes the bonuses are not just money or but actually more combat dice.
Oh wow!
This would be the Victoria that you get, or you get the Légion d'honneur, which translates to troops with great morale who get to roll 3 more white dice because Napoleon has pointed you. And if you have the most cannons, you get this. This one goes on. This one, if you control the most homelands, like maybe you're occupying some French territory, boy, that would go over well. Or you capture things, or you have the biggest navy, or maybe you have the most elite forces because you could have elite forces. So this game is going to be like a trip. It's going to be experience. It's going to be like so many options presented to you at any given time. The combat system is just delightful. And you have these rows and rows of columns. These figurines will be columns marching at you, six abreast, marching at a column. We don't know yet how detailed we want to get into the uniforms. Should each one have its historic uniform or anything? But I can tell you this: we have an awe and a respect for history, both Tom and I, that we will try to reflect here in every opportunity we have.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Two things. was trying to sell that. I mean, I'm just trying to share the enthusiasm I have.
Yeah.
I can't wait to show this sucker off with oh, it's navies.
Yeah.
You got Nelson out here. I'm not kidding.
Yeah.
And then you've got and if you capture Napoleon, you win the game, or
Yeah.
and so on. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I just got to say, for the fans there, it's a gorgeous game. It reminds you kind of playing with toy soldiers, because you just move the figurines around and there's cavalry and infantry and artillery and all that stuff. And it's also an alternate history game as well, which you don't see a lot of. Or it can be an alternate history game. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, yeah, think about that, what I said earlier. One is Napoleon won at Waterloo, and the other is that the Congress of Vienna fell apart, and so everybody, it's a big free-for-all in 1815 and on. Because of the Congress of Vienna, they reorganized Europe, based on their idea, which was correct, was they don't want to punish France or diminish anyone. They want everyone to. It was an early version of MAD, mutually assured destruction. Mutually assured destruction. Yes. So if Germany was attacked by France would be as big as Germany, and so on, and England would have a role. And so there was a balance of power that they established. They were very, and because that, I don't think in history is often seen, where great countries decide the best method to have a prolonged peace is through a balance of power.
Yeah.
Take consideration all human nature, and
you
get it.
Yeah. I mean, it reminds me of the Treaty of Westphalia at the end of the 30 Years' War, where where they effectively decided we need to make a European balance of power where everyone's so balanced that we don't get another 30 Years' War.
Yeah.
And I think the big takeaway from the Congress of Vienna was that they thought France itself wasn't the enemy, it was liberalism. And so we need to prevent just another revolution from happening, and the best way to do that is for us all to work together as monarchical autocratic regimes.
Right. Thus when Napoleon is exiled finally to Elba, Louis XVIII is what's the word? To the throne, and thus the monarchy is back. And what a sad moment for France. That was a real step backwards in human progress. So Napoleon's coming later. Anyway. My feelings on Napoleon. I don't know. What a mystery. Every time I look at a painting of him or a drawing, I never see the same man twice. He's presented different every time.
Yes.
I wonder what he actually looked like. I visited his tomb in Paris. I've studied his battles in during that early 19th century. And I look at his adventure into. I keep wanting to go to visit him in Moscow and say, no, spend the winter here. No, stay here. We can take care of this in the spring. The whole world shuts down during the winter. Long, thin blue line with leaving a red trail of freezing feet. Okay. And but alas, he got himself beat up. So that's in it. It was after that he was sent exiled to Elba, right? And then it was after Waterloo when he went to St. Helena.
Yes.
And anyway, where was I?
He's an incredibly enigmatic figure. Like, in the cult around him in France is kind of bizarre. I took a gap year where I spent some time in France, and they either worship him as a god or they hate war so much that they want to throw him in the ash heap, I think. And his tomb is just incredible. It's just so ostentatious.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. French attitudes on Napoleon. Uh, there's a left in France that yeah would not be keen on Napoleon.
Yeah.
That same leftist would not be keen on de Gaulle,
Yeah.
but the guy who loves de Gaulle would love Napoleon,
Yeah.
and they're both patriots.
Yeah.
One is more extreme patriot than the
Yeah.
other. The liberal one would probably be more international than
Yeah.
French
Yeah.
patriot.
Yeah.
So Napoleon, but the question that intrigues me is what was Napoleon? Was he a hero, or was he really a monster? And he caused the death of so many people for no particular reason.
Yeah.
I could make arguments either way.
Yeah. Go ahead.
What we should never forget is when we're talking about Napoleon or anybody in history is take into account the period of time. Judge them from the universe that they were living in, the world they're living in, and not by today's standards. I think that's a terrible mistake to do that.
Yeah, I agree with you fully there. He reminds me a bit of Genghis Khan, who the Mongols view as this great genius and their greatest leader ever, and he was, and he's probably one of the greatest military geniuses of all time, but he was one of the most brutal murderers ever.
Well, I think I've concluded that he understood the value of horror. Okay?
Yeah.
My story earlier about we're going to roast you all tomorrow. If you're not
Yeah.
So, and then they would ride away, two guys on their crazy little ponies, and they maybe arrogantly shoot a bow back into the town. I don't know. This is all happening only in my own mind.
Yeah.
So, but it did happen.
Yeah.
And it all worked. And when they came back the next morning, the damn door was open.
Yeah.
And then somebody would walk down to a couple of Mongols who showed up to collect everything, and he would that person who would greet the Mongols would come with the head of the mayor of the town saying he resisted, so to be on their side we killed him or whatever. Or despicable human behavior you could think stay alive would be occurring. And it was based on terror. You saw Apocalypse Now, the horror, and they understood the horror. You got to make horror your friend. You got to make peace with horror. Genghis Khan did that.
Yeah. Have you ever had the temptation to have historic armies go up against each other and see what happens? To have the Mongols.
Weapons. That's where you. Is it weapons?
No, I mean armies designs like Genghis Khan versus the Romans.
Well, that's my. How would they have their weapons?
Yes.
And so, where would this happen? Do I ever think about it? Yes, I have. But I dwell more on the problems of why it doesn't mesh well.
Yeah.
And so I don't know if the value of 3 is the same for both of them. Just any value. 2.
Yeah.
I would have to. Well, that would be quite a study. You got to figure out the Mongols. Am I saying that right? The Mongols. What are their hit points of their bows compared to, I don't know, the hit points of Roman bows, artillery. So the question could be asked, and that'd probably be so. Could a Roman company defeat a Mongol small company, equivalent number of mounted cavalry? Maybe. I mean, they started losing it just right away. I mean, what the hell? And so, so cavalry against infantry, that doesn't work well. So it's hard to find these things, but I enjoy looking for that kind of, or answering those kind of questions. I do it all the time.
Yeah, I mean, the issue with scientific surveys is that you try to strip down any of the variables, but if you just pick a flat plane, the Mongols are going to win, and no real historic situation will be completely stripped of variables.
No, you can't.
Yeah.
You can't. There's just too many variables,
Yeah.
and which ones to consider. See, that's my job. Which of these
Yeah.
variables to consider, which ones not to. For example, there's people screaming in my ear all the time. Well, you gotta have weather and actions now. No.
Yeah.
Another thing I don't need is to know how much gasoline is in
Yeah.
that a deuce and a half over
Yeah.
there.
Yeah.
No. And because every time I introduced more to a game, it didn't get necessarily better. It just got more complicated.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I've learned, and it's going to stand out in it already is standing out in War Room, and it will stand out again in Imperial Borders, and that is the beauty of simplicity.
Yes.
It's the way to go.
Yeah. Yeah, I understand, because for me, no matter what I do, there will always be more pedants who will say, go into more detail there. But if you just keep going into more detail, the thing's gonna be an hour. And for my father, he talked about playing War in the Pacific, where each unit had an oil counter, and that made the game practically unplayable because you had to maintain the oil counter for like every single dinghy.
What is that?
Yeah.
Why do designers do that crap?
Yeah. Yeah. I know. I think it's because they're trying to make it like as realistic as possible, but after a certain point, it's just you're shooting yourself in the foot.
Yeah, you are.
Yeah.
I mean, that's my opinion.
Yeah. Yeah. Are there any stories from your time in the board game industry you want to share, or amusing anecdotes?
Yeah, I want to share the first time I went to a board game company.
Yeah.
I was in France.
Yeah.
And so I was living in France, and I designed Axis and Allies, or it was called 1902. And I was anxious to get this to a publisher.
Yes.
It was ready to go to a publisher.
Yeah.
So I go to a French publisher, and who is in Paris, and I don't know anybody there, and I asked at the reception for the R&D department, and this cute little receptionist said third floor and turn left, and so I went to the third floor, turned left, and I walked right into this big management meeting. With all of these directors and the head of R&D, and marketing and sales, and yada yada yada, the whole thing down the list, and so everybody was startled by my busting in through the door, and I had this package under my arm, and they start shooting questions to me in French, and I wasn't yet that fluent in French.
Yes.
So I got the gist of it, and I said, no, I'm here to show a product, and the secretary got up, ran over to me, escorted me out of the room, and said, we'll talk to you right after this.
Yeah.
And as I was walking out, the whole room broke into like laughter.
Yeah.
What was I, in my mid-20s or something?
Yeah.
And I just busted in on their big corporate meeting.
Yeah.
Back in those days, people didn't go around killing each other unless they were on airplanes. So on an airplane, you could be killed.
Yeah.
But nobody came to your office.
Yeah.
It was better back then.
You weren't a Basque or Algerian terrorist.
Oh yeah, Algeria. Yeah. You know about the Algerian smile, right?
No.
It's a big smile.
Yeah.
That French, what was it? The Algerian War. Wow, that was nasty in France.
Yeah.
Again, horror was the basic strategy.
A funny thing is, there's now a popular French comedy TV show about the French foreign policy during the Algerian War. It's the most bizarre thing.
Huh.
They've turned it into a comedy.
Maybe there's enough distance.
Yeah.
Maybe there's enough distance by now. Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's. I mean, all the veterans of that experience, they've got to be late 70s,
Yeah.
um, into their 80s.
Yeah.
Yeah, it might be time to make fun.
Yeah. Yeah. Hmm. Um, what commonality, if any, do you think there is between alternate history and board game design?
That when you start the game, you are rewriting history.
Yes.
What I do is I set up a historic situation. Axis and Allies. The core game of Axis and Allies starts in 1942.
Yes.
I watermark of the Axis.
Yeah.
So it's an interesting kind of balance, because I'm also contemplating balance, as you talked about earlier. So I look for the weaker of the two sides. I look for their apex, or their most
Yes.
prominent moment, and that was definitely 1932.
Yes.
42. And so I start there and I set that up, and then I look for a balance of power. So
Yeah.
Germans, yeah, tough. Ooh, how are they compared to to England? France has already fallen. So okay, all of Europe is occupied. So here, this player, this guy who will control Germany, has this gray area. That's his domain. And with that, he then has to expand, and he can win this, what we're going to be playing here, a game. He can win this game if he captures England and maybe Moscow over here.
Yes.
United States capital, not so much. I don't even think it's even possible. And that's good, because historically it would have been a very impractical.
Yes.
It's not realistic. Fine. I love when history and the game mechanics have a nice marriage. It's when they conflict is where I find myself having to choose between what's more important. And I think I do a good job with that, by the way. What's more important, the game mechanic or the historical accuracy? It depends on the question. If you had a question from your years of playing Axis and Allies as to why something might have been done or not done, I'd be glad to answer your question, but only yours.
I'm none really so far. I mean,
Oh, good. All right.
a big question is, like, it's very easy for the Japanese to conquer India, and I know that's historically not the case, but
Yeah.
I understand from a balance perspective you need to move stuff across the British Empire over a certain time scale.
Yeah, no, but it's not easy it takes a dedicated effort from Japan to India. And I don't think Japan and historically had a dedicated effort
Yeah.
They didn't want to have to feed these people.
Yeah.
They didn't have to get caught up in some kind of civil. They didn't want another China on their hands. So all right. So the in Axis, okay. Yes. It's not. That is a perfect example of trade-off between history. I could have made India stronger, then there would have been no contest. The Allies can win every game, unless So, you touched the nerve. Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Bravo.
Yeah. How did you feel introducing Italy as a faction in War Room?
How do I feel?
Yeah.
I feel like it's indispensable. Got to be there. I lived in Italy for a couple of years. I got to tell you, Italy, wow. World War II. I used to meet people who were in the Italian army. There was this one guy. He was a janitor, and he had been at Stalingrad.
Yeah. Oh, wow.
Or on the way to Stalingrad. Somewhere in the Stalingrad. I don't know if he was in the city. He may have. I don't know if he was in the city. He was up there. He was that weak flank that fell. That caused the encirclement of Stalingrad right there.
Yeah.
It was Italians and Romanians in a cave, and which the Russian pincer was coming in from two different
Yeah.
directions. Pincer works, and broke through at that juncture between the Romanians and the Italians. This guy was in that, and he told me the horrors of that.
Wow.
He says, "Cold. He can't stand cold
Yeah.
today." Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So that's always, as I was growing up, I was always surrounded with World War II veterans.
Yeah.
And of course, then my father's own story, his story, by the way, if I'm not just skipping all over the place here, but just quickly, he was in the National Guard when the Japanese bombed Pearl Harbor. He was in Florida. Okay, so what does that mean? That means he was one of the first guys to ever get into the Army. Okay?
Yeah.
They took him and this National Guard unit from Massachusetts, no, from Connecticut, and this National Guard unit from Tennessee, and put them together and formed what was called the 43rd Infantry Division.
Yeah.
Put them on a transport ship with no escort. It was a presidential ocean liner. It was the Coolidge, and it raced across the Pacific, no escort. Its only defense was its speed, apparently. It was coming into New Hebrides to fuel up or something, or drop something off, and it ran into a mine. 5,000 guys got shipwrecked. They were on their way to Guadalcanal. They to help the Marines, but they never made it. And then later they got replenished, sent back. My father fought in the Solomon Islands, up the Solomon Islands, then into New Guinea, and then into the Philippines. He has so many damn beachheads. He got bombed by the Mitsubishis. He stood up against bonsai charges. He's seen it all, and it was all in this book. And so how could I resist?
Yeah.
It was great.
Wow, that
great.
sounds incredible.
Yep.
It's always shocked me, being a young person, how recent World War II was in real terms. Like, my grandfather, I mean, he fought in it, and he died recently, but it always seems so distant to me. He was an adjunct to the Enigma code team. He didn't actually do any code hacking. He served tea for them.
Okay.
Yeah. And he...
who knows? That could have been everything right there.
Yeah.
He served up at the right time.
Yeah.
Good. Nice story. Nice story.
Yeah.
So many of us have links to people who contributed so much into World War II. Yeah. What is it? 75.
Yeah.
Oh my God. So my father was in World War II. I'm still alive. I feel like. And 100 years isn't all that long.
Yeah. I mean, we're getting to the point where the people in World War II we'll be passing this in a couple years. They will be closer to the Civil War than they are to us.
Okay, so that think about it, 1940.
Yeah.
I mean, here we are, 1940. That's not even 100 years.
Yeah.
The Civil War.
Yeah.
It's Civil War. Cannons, muskets, blah, blah, blah. What? Okay, how long is it? So 40.
80 years. Yeah. So they're actually closer to. We're roughly equidistant, basically.
Okay.
Yeah.
So is there a bigger technical advance between that of the Civil War and World War II, or World War II and our current?
We just have to wait for the next war to find out. I would say my guess would be Civil War to World War II, because you just have whole new arms of the military open up. You have armored, you have artillery. I mean, you have artillery on a whole new level, submarines. But we don't know what the next war is going to be like. There's probably going to be hacking, war in space, tanks that could probably kill 13 World War II era tanks that were getting taken down, genetic engineering, all that stuff.
Yeah. Oh, can't wait to see all that.
Yeah, I'm so glad I'm in draftable age during all this political tension.
Army in 1965.
Yeah.
I was in for 5 years. I went in the Army in 1965. I mean, just as a land war, an Asian land war is beginning.
Yeah.
And so I did basic training in the summer of 65 down in Georgia.
Yeah.
Georgia, I think. Yeah. And then went to jump school.
Yeah.
Became a paratrooper. Went to the 82nd Airborne, which is at Fort Bragg, North Carolina.
Yeah. Yeah.
Spent a couple of years with them. Meanwhile, the war in Vietnam is going on. It's 1967.
Yeah.
10th offensive is a year away, but they called me out. I get orders to go to Paris, France. So that was
Yeah.
my first Paris. It was after I got out of the Army, I went back to Paris.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So that's what drew me to Paris after I got out of the Army.
Yeah.
Plus school was free. Education was free in Europe. And
Yeah.
I had a job working for Merrill Lynch, so I had all the work papers and everything. I had this terrible socialist medicine, which was just amazingly, wonderfully efficient and perfect for me in every way. And yeah, so I found myself saying, "What's my rush to go back to the States?"
Yeah.
I've been upbeat. But I didn't have a profession. And I was going to the Sorbonne, and I went to the Faculty of Vincennes and a couple of other schools, all on a GI Bill. So I was getting GI Bill benefits, but I didn't have to pay them out because school was free.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah. Yeah.
I think everybody should have go to Paris. Spend his youth there.
Yeah. C'est un bel pays. Je parle un peu de français.
Ah non, c'est pas mal, hein? Tu parles bien.
Merci beaucoup. Je pense j'ai le niveau B1, mais pour dire les choses, c'est plus haut de ça, et pour lire des livres, c'est plus haut de ça, mais pour les grammaires, c'est plus bas de ça.
I didn't understand a word you said. You sound like you got a Canadian accent there.
Yeah, my mother's Canadian.
Oh, yeah, that Canadian accent came through very nicely.
God, I don't know how, my mother's an Anglo. I don't know how I picked up a Quebecois accent.
I got so good at French. It's been a long time, but I got so good at it. I used to pretend I was Canadian. So I didn't have to deal with the Vietnam War. It was still going on. I'm going to college in France, and I didn't want to fight the Vietnam War every day that I was there. So sometimes I was Canadian.
Okay. Yeah. I'm a dual citizen, so I can play both games.
Oh, okay, great.
Yeah.
But yeah, sure. No, this pandemic, you certainly handled yourselves admirably.
Yeah. When I was up there, I had to do a 2-week quarantine, and the Canadian government, they likely track the phones of people to see if they're maintaining their quarantine properly, and they have like random checkups from the police and stuff.
Huh.
Yeah.
Huh. Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, this will all be over soon, I hope. And
yeah.
But it looks like it might be another year. And if we don't get our act together, there's no reason for it to stop ever.
Yeah.
So, I think I have to take a little break for a moment.
Yeah. I mean, we're past the hour mark, so this might be a logical place to stop. So, thank you so much.